And welcome to the Smart Money Simplified podcast with your host, Brent Mekosh. Brent, New Jersey is calling you this week as we record this. It's setting record low temperatures and asking that you return home from the desert out in Arizona.
Zero chance of that. It's actually been cold out here, but cold for us. We might be 65 degrees today, but I think my car said 40 on my way into the office. So that's I
Whoa.
don't know how people survive in any other climate. Quite frankly, it's chilly here, but not like you have in New Jersey right now.
No, no, 40 degrees, as you know, people start walking around in t-shirts and shorts here. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, God, it's like starting to warm up now. So what's on the table today? I'm excited to see what you're going to be talking about.
You give me a good segue because you and I have the luxury when it gets nasty out or cold out here. If it's extremely hot in the summer, if you're extremely cold in the wintertime, we can turn the heat up.
Yep.
We've got a house, we've got a roof over our heads, we've got things that we can do to protect ourselves from the elements. And one way that I think that my business really shelters me is by any measure, I'm in a luxury business. The people, by the time they make it into my office, have accumulated some degree of wealth and achieve some measure of success. And sometimes you just don't realize that there is a whole nother world out there of people that are really struggling in a very big way. And I think this is a really timely conversation that we're having today because it's a really fantastic organization, not just here in Phoenix, but I think they make maybe an extra large impact here in Phoenix, and that would be St. Vincent de Paul. And I'm fortunate enough today to sit down with Ryan Corry, who is the Chief Philanthropy Officer of St. Vincent de Paul here in Phoenix. And you're going to talk about a little bit about what you're doing and maybe share with us an insight into a world, Ryan, that might be somewhat different than what we're dealing with here at the Well Stewards every single day. So I know you're super busy. I really appreciate you taking this time to talk to me, and it's good to see you today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. And I'll tell you what, I think our work and our worlds are more interconnected than people realize. And the opportunity to really help our neighbors is a lot easier than people realize too. So I know we'll get into that.
So tell me a little bit about first, before we get into St. Vincent de Paul and the work that you're doing, not just in Phoenix, but around the country. Give me an idea how you got where you are. What got you to the seat you're sitting in today?
Yeah. So, I've volunteered for lots of organizations and St. Vincent de Paul in particular since I was 10 years old. And some of that was because I was probably a curious, talkative, rambunctious kid, and my mom needed somewhere to send me to get that energy out. So I started volunteering with Vincentians. They got food pantries across the world, and they get food donations. You got to sort them, you got to pack them for families in need, and then they go out to families in need. And when I was doing that, I was probably about 10 years old, and I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. We go to the grocery store, like, isn't that everyone's reality? And hold on, I know a lot more people who want to help. Like, why is this even a problem? This seems like a math problem. And I've really been fixated on that idea, a little bit naive when I was 10, obviously, but I don't think the fundamentals of that have changed. As I meet you and Jeff and all these other folks, I really do believe there are more people who want to help than who need help, particularly in our communities. And it's my job, and it's been my job here at St. Vincent de Paul for the last 12 years to make that math work out, to invite people in who want to help, connect them with needs in our community. And so, how did I get here? I got thrown into a bad economy when I graduated college, 2008. And the first job I was offered was fundraising at my alma mater. And I gladly took it because they were going to pay me to do it. And I did that for a few years, moved to Las Vegas, did fundraising for a brand new performing arts center, which was very cool. Did that for a few years. And then my wife and I wanted to come back home. We wanted to come home to Phoenix. And the interesting part was that organization that I volunteered with at 10 years old, they were looking for someone to do the only thing I know how to do in the world. The only skill I have, which is sharing about mission and inviting people to help. So it's been a really cool run here for the last 12 years.
Now, I want to take you back to when you were 10 because your household was obviously doing something right if they were instilling this kind of value
Mm.
in you at that age. What was your just to take a little deeper dive into your upbringing, what was that like where you're at 10 years old doing that kind of work?
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of money. In fact, when the school that I went to um, had tuition, and for a lot of the time, my grandparents ended up helping us out with that. My dad was in the restaurant business, literally serving people every day, right? Like that hard work ethic and the hard work in restaurants. And my mom worked at a church, and so we had that sort of upbringing about faith in God, but also faith in others, faith in the good in people, and just a service, hardworking mentality. And I think that was always present. That's what my parents gave to me. And I do think it was just normal. No, it was normal in our house to serve. And I think that really made all the difference.
And give us some background for anybody that's listening that does not know about St. Vincent de Paul, the foundings of the organization, what the mission is, what makes the Phoenix office, I think, more special. I'm biased, but
Yeah.
give a little bit of background in terms of what St. Vincent de Paul does.
Yeah, it was actually founded in Paris, 1833, by a guy named Frederick Ozanam, who was about 20 years old when he founded it. And the interesting thing was, he wasn't organized. He didn't have a grand plan. It was essentially him and some fraternity buddies who saw a need and started to respond to that need. You and Bill were talking about how cold it was, and it was actually in the winter in Paris. And they started delivering clothes to people who needed them to stay warm. And like all good things, when it started getting really big and they needed to organize, they found the women leaders in the community, and the women came in and helped them organize these 20-year-old guys who were studying at the university. And they took on the name, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Vincent de Paul was a priest in Paris, who actually uh, kind of rejected I'll call it a very posh appointment, and said, I don't know, I think what I'm put on this earth to do is to care for the least of the people in this city. And he served the poor. And so they took on his name as an organization name. From there, we are now in over 150 countries. Here in Arizona, we founded in 1946. So we're closing in on 80 years of service in Arizona. And by most measures, the number of people we serve, the number of volunteers we serve, the number of services we provide, the amount of support we have from the community, we're the largest St. Vincent de Paul in the world. And no one owes us anything. This is all out of community generosity, which I think makes it the most special.
Before we get into what you're doing for the community and how you're serving the community, is there any insight that you might have? Because obviously I know you've done some work up in Vegas and you've been involved with a lot of other initiatives. What do you think makes Phoenix special in terms of the organization?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think internally, it's really strong leadership. For 26 years, we had the same CEO. His name's Steve Zabilski, and he was in for-profit business beforehand. So he brought a lot of business principles into the nonprofit world, which I think is more common now, but less common, that almost 30 years ago. And he ran things as a steward, which I think is ironic that we're talking as you're the wealth stewards, but he really felt like he was a steward of other people's money and generosity and time. It was not his. He was helping people find what they wanted to make happen in the world, whether that was through serving people in the medical or dental clinic, or helping families not become evicted, helping kids. He was just stewarding their wishes. And that carries on to our current CEO, Shannon Clancy, who's been here more than 20 years. So internally, I think it's a lot of great leadership and stewarding other people's generosity. Externally in our community, I think Arizona, still young enough, still growing. I still think this is a place where the best idea wins. And if we have the best idea on how to care for people in need, we have a can-do, start now attitude in this community. And I think that's what makes our work so special. We don't have a lot of bureaucratic red tape to get through. Um, we have really good ideas on how to help people, and we've been able to do it because the community gets behind us quickly and decisively.
I agree with that. As somebody that grew up, in the Northeast and spent 10 years in New York City, one of the things that to me is special about this community is that there's not the embedded ideas of, well, this is the way we've always done things. There's not the embedded the very tight cliques that it becomes harder to break into that. I think that the West is truly, in the Southwest in particular, I think is very unique because, to your point, it invites new ideas, it invites creativity, and it invites different ways to maybe solve some problems. And speaking of some of those problems, what are some of the things that St. Vincent de Paul is doing to help the community? Because now, thanks to you, I'm learning a little bit more about the organization. But prior to that, in my mind, it's like, oh, they serve some meals, and you kind of put you in that box before you finally get the broader picture of what's actually really happening. So, give us an idea of how expansive the services that you're providing really are, and what some of the fundamental key goals and values that are driving the organization are.
Yeah, great question. And at the end, I want to hear, as you've learned,
Yeah.
what you've found to be sort of the most impressive or the most interesting thing, because I always find that fascinating. But what we do, we sum it up in 4 words: feed, clothe, house, heal. That's what we do. And our our measurements of success, it's really about how we can help people find stability and connection, right? You could put out thousands and thousands of meals a day, which we do. 7,000 meals a day come from our kitchen to help people in need. But you could put out all those meals and not really help people move forward in their life, right? You could feed them, and that's good. That's good in and of itself. But we use the meal, whether we're doing it from our kitchen or whether we're delivering food boxes, 170,000 food boxes delivered to people's front doors every year. We use food as the literal and figurative entree to invite people in to get back on a path to stability. And we do that through many services, right? We're housing uh, almost 500 people right now, 491 rooms we have between 2 different campus facilities, and they're transitional in nature. You can't stay there forever. But as long as you're moving towards stability each and every week, we're going to help you find it. Our case managers are fantastic. The 3 meals a day they get, the community they're building, our folks helping them find stable housing that they can afford. We're going to help people move into that next step and regain stability on their own. We also do that through our medical and dental clinics. Each of those clinics is going to see about 9,000 patient visits each year, and they are charity clinics, right? There is little to no money exchanging hands. Sometimes we get families who say, I don't want anything for free. I want to help. And we ask them to make a donation to help the next patient, right? And it's minimal, but we have families who feel really strongly about that in our community. And it's a really beautiful thing to see. But charity services, no money, no insurance changing hands. And then we also have some thrift stores throughout the valley. We're trying to diversify our revenue base so that people can get access to low cost, high quality goods. But we also have a way to make a little bit of money that's not simply your traditional fundraising or charitable gifts. So pretty expansive business, 17 acres of campus, about 7 other locations throughout central Arizona. And we go all the way up to that northern border. We go east and west. So central and northern Arizona is a pretty big, diverse territory to cover, but we do it through a lot of volunteers, 17,000 volunteers every year. We do it through wonderful Vincentians who work in those food pantries, 80 food pantries throughout central and northern Arizona. That's where I got my start. And it's just a great way for our community to come together and see people in need, not as other or them, but as neighbors who need us to walk alongside them.
Now, how much of what you're seeing is what in my mind is like deeply entrenched homelessness? And I'll tell you what I mean when I say that. So when I lived in New York City, there might be the same guy that you see for 3 years that has this corner and he's occupying that
Yeah.
space. Unfortunately, now in Arizona, there's obviously been an explosion of homelessness that we've all seen due to a variety of reasons. But some of the big intersections, you see the same people, and I think that one of these things that I've learned from you is I believe that's a misconception of what's really happening, where a lot of the homelessness that you're seeing is something that should be very temporary because it was one bad bill that happened, one missed payment on something, or something. If you can at least just bridge that gap, then you've saved those people from the streets or a rougher situation, and then all the cascading effects that happen downstream after that. So that's a long way to ask the question of the people that you're serving. How much are you think are just the chronically homeless that might have a drug issue, alcohol issue, a psychological problem, versus people that just through the luck and the challenges in life hit a bad stretch and they just need that hand up?
Yeah, I'll answer it with real data. Over the past number of years, about 3.5 years, when we go and engage with people who are on the streets, exactly the same folks you're talking about, and we send out 2 by 2. We typically have a male and a female go together, our outreach team. When we engage people and say, "Hey, what's your name? Did you know that St. Vincent de Paul has some beds where if you wanted to come inside, like we'd be happy to take you there right now." When we engage with folks, depending on the area and the time and all these things, between 70 and 80% of the people say that they want to come inside. They go, "That sounds like a better deal than what I got right now. Thank you." And I think that tells a better story than, frankly, kind of guessing about the population that's seriously mentally ill or that's addicted, because people who are experiencing those things, they also live
They
in
don't want to come
homes
inside.
too, right?
Yeah,
It's not just the homeless folks.
that's
Like
true. Yep.
the difference is one of them has a place to go and sleep at night, and one of them doesn't. And I know which one has a better chance of making it back to stability. So we got to get people inside. And I think we're just going to keep working until all the people who would say yes to coming inside, that they've been invited, right? And then that other 20 or 30% who's out there, that's a different problem. That's a different a solution set that we need. That's seriously mentally ill. That's seriously addicted. And so we can address that separately, right? But we have to have the beds. We have to have the invitations to get people inside.
Now you mentioned 500 beds. Is that the number that you threw out there?
Yep.
I'm guessing now, unfortunately, where we're at today, probably all occupied, correct?
Yep, yeah, they are. Yeah, we have a pretty significant wait list. And we one of the things that we care most about is we don't want to duplicate a whole bunch of services, right? So there's other groups in our community that support, different groups really well. We're seeing a huge influx of older adults who are becoming homeless, and most of it is because of rising rents, low vacancy, and you said it, one bad bill, a health bill, car repair. We see a lot of people whose spouses pass away, and that really sets them back. And it's this one thing where everything else in their life has been about hard work and making it. It's one thing that gets them behind on rent, and then they're behind for the next month, and then they're evicted, right? At 65, 70 years old for the first time in their life. That's what we are really good at.
Yeah, and then good luck getting into another place if you've been evicted at that point and you're
You're
behind the
right.
eight ball already.
You're right.
So what's the average stay if they're in one of your beds and they've gotten to the point where they've been fortunate enough to land that? How long are they with you? And is there a timeline? Is there a limit?
You know, we have one main rule, two main rules: be a positive community member and make steps forward to stability each and every week. The average stay, we have two different facilities. One really moves people straight off the street. It's kind of like our triage. We call that our Washington Street shelter. The average stay there is 4 to 5 months. Um, but a lot of folks move into our fully transitional housing communities. We have three of them, two geared toward older adults. That's about 160 beds, and one of them geared toward workforce population. So the folks who need an address and just need a place to sleep as they save a little money to be able to pay first and last month's rent and get that apartment. So in the triage in Washington Street, it's 4 to 5 months. Fully transitional, where we're dealing with older adults, pretty complex health issues, it's 7 to 9 months. And our workforce opportunity, we just opened it. So we just opened it 4 months ago. We're seeing our folks move out for the first time. So best I can tell you is it's somewhere between 3 and 6 months in there. But I think it's going to skew shorter as time goes on and we get more people moving through there.
And that last service that you mentioned you're offering in terms of healing, what are you doing? Well, now you've got these people under a roof. They understand that there's somebody that actually gives a hoot about them. What are you
Yeah,
doing with them to try to get them back on that path to stability?
yeah, you said a really important thing, that someone cares about them, right? And I think from a mental health standpoint, when you understand and feel that, you can get your body right. And so, we have a medical clinic here. Our chief medical officer, Dr. John Anwar, is also a hospitalist at St. Joe's in town, and he's a Creighton University faculty member. He believes in partnership. So he's pulling in docs from Mayo, from Phoenix Children's Hospital, from the Dignity Network, and he's bringing all of these docs in under one roof to say, do whatever we need to help heal this person. Um, I don't know about your experience, but normally when I go into the doctor, I'm in there 12 to 15 minutes and then I'm out, right? Our average appointment is between 45 and 60 minutes so that we can address all points of health. Where are you living? What are you eating? Talk about stress, right? All of these things that people got into the medical field to do to really heal people. Externally, it's really hard to do that when you have pressures of paying for your real estate and paying for your staff and billing insurance. These are the pressures that make those visits 12 to 15 minutes.
Yep.
We don't have those pressures because it's all charitable work. So doctors and dentists come and they get to spend time really healing patients, and they say to us, that's why I got into this field. Like I didn't get into the field to run from room to room. I got into the field to heal this person in front of me. So we have the best specialists in town. It's probably easier for you to get into a specialist at St. Vincent de Paul than it is at through your insurance, which is kind of an interesting model.
Now, what does demand look like for your services? Say amongst over the last 5, 10 years or so, has it? Because being in the neighborhood and driving around every day, to me, it seems like there's a heck of a lot more demand than there might have been 5 years ago. Is reality matching with what my perception is?
It is, yeah, and you're pretty keenly aware to see that. I mean, so from 2024 to 2023 to 2024, we had a 30% increase in food need year over year. And so that means a lot of additional food boxes going out, a lot of gift cards to grocery stores going out. And this increase in need is all happening with rising costs of things, right? Well, unfortunately, we have to take on those rising costs too. There's not a St. Vincent de Paul price when you walk into the grocery store, right? And so we're having to just in food and medical dental care, we're having to raise a lot more money to provide charity care for the same number of people because of those rising costs. So we're kind of getting hit on both sides. Demand goes up, cost goes up. It's a chicken or the egg, but at the end of the day, we're having to answer to both the chicken and the egg.
Now let's talk about that because obviously all this stuff costs money. We live on an economic planet. There's no doubt about that. How is St. Vincent de Paul getting the resources that you need to be able to help people out?
Yeah, the number one resource stream that we have is charitably inclined individuals, right? Just caring members of our community. Um, and Arizona is unique because we offer these tax credits, right? It's the number one thing I ask people when they say, well, what can I do? And I say, well, first and easiest, make sure you're maximizing your tax credits. If you're filing, if you're jointly filing, you can give $938 to St. Vincent de Paul's work and get a credit back, right? As long as you owe taxes. Now, I'm an English major. I'm not an accountant, right? So talk to your pros like Brent and your accounting team and these folks. But it's such an easy way, especially in Arizona, to give. The other thing, and you're much more knowledgeable and in this world than I am, is when folks have a good year, and they start seeing some tax liability, thinking about things like a donor advised fund to put that money into your donor advised fund, get the full tax benefit in the year that you do it, but then you can choose when and how to give that money out, right? And so I always share with folks tax credits, donor advised funds, talk to your pros. They will get you set up because it is the thing that we need most to continue to help the community here in Arizona.
And you bring up two really excellent resource things that people can do is that tax credit. You're paying that money anyway, and to have some authorship of where those dollars are going and being able to see directly how those dollars are making impact, I think is really powerful. And I would argue, I don't know the exact math behind it, but I'm pretty sure that St. Vincent's de Paul's fish efficiency levels is probably significantly higher than what the state government is going to be. And to your point, in terms of you bring up an excellent point that we probably don't quite frankly mention enough is when there is that, we deal with a lot of business owners and there might be a liquidity event and there's a big chunk of money that's coming in and you want to do something to mitigate those taxes today, but you don't want to spend it all today. Well, the donor advised fund is a layup for that. And provided, 501c3 is the recipient as you guys are, you can take that heavy earnings year where you want to make that nice contribution and level that impact out over multiple years in the future to come. So thank you for bringing that up because I think it's an excellent point. Aside from private donors, is the government involved? Where are the other funding sources?
Yeah, we over the past few years, we have developed different partnerships with city, county, state, and they have come to us actually and asked and said, we have a challenge here. We think you're pretty good at this work. Is there a way that we can use some of this mostly federal funding that we have and help you shelter more people, help you get folks to avoid their eviction by paying their rent or utility bill. And so we've been a really, really good resource and partner for some of that government funding. It's only about, it used to be only 5% of our budget, somewhere between 3 and 5% of our budget. Today, it's about 20 to 22% of our budget, but you can't count on that, right? We
Right.
see cycles, we see different things, and you know this better than I do. We will have a pullback, right? And so we'll have to, in order to keep doing the same work, we'll have to find other sources like charitable individuals. We work with a lot of foundations. Those liquidity events have created quite a few foundations in town, especially when you're selling off real estate portfolios and these kind of things. Establishing a family foundation has been a thing that we see a lot of folks do, been very helpful to us. And then, a big one that falls in the individual category, but it's deferred, is when people care about something and when they want to transfer values to their family or into their community, considering what you're going to do for your legacy and your estate is super important. And it's largely the most significant gift that anyone can and will make, whether living or deceased, right? That is the largest gift that anyone will make. And so I would encourage folks, and look, you're right. St. Vincent de Paul's efficiency, you give $1, we're spending 90 cents of it directly to help people, not to pay real estate or employees. 90 cents goes straight to the cause. So while I think we're incredibly efficient, there's wonderful organizations throughout the valley who, if you have some kind of value set that you want to live past you, considering some percentage in your estate, considering putting a charity as your IRA beneficiary, your insurance benefit, like these are easy ways to support your favorite charities, to transfer your values, but not to pull from your today pocket, money that you think you might need today or in the future. And I just love inviting people to do that because most folks say, I've actually never thought about that before.
And you've talked to me a little bit about how you guys are using technology to better connect with people. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I already mentioned I was an English major, so pretty much a lot of the things I've talked about, I've had to learn, and including technology. We built an app, and it comes out of this idea that you see around Christmas time. It happens in the malls, it happens in churches, community centers, but you can pull a little ornament off a tree, and it's like, 7-year-old boy wants Hot Wheels, and then you go and you buy the Hot Wheels, and or maybe you adopt an entire family for the holiday season. You help them with their presents and their meal, and these things are such a gift to families in need during the holidays. But we were sitting around, and our current CEO Shannon said to me, I wish people knew that families needed to be adopted every day of the year for their everyday crises. Like if we could just adopt the family when their car broke down and they needed $150 to replace the battery, how much easier would that be for that family to get to work, to pay the bills, to stay in their home? And so we built an app that is essentially just that, right? Families come in and they say, I'm about to be evicted, but I only need $300 to make it. And I'm stable, I can work. But the thing that caused it was I had to pay the car battery bill, or I had to stay home with my kid who was sick and I couldn't get paid. Well, we vet that. Our staff makes sure this is a legitimate need. We always give money directly to landlords or utility companies. We never send people off with a check or money. And what we do is we match people who need help with people who have raised their hands through the app. And they say, yeah, I'll help. Just tell me when someone needs help. And those families get matched. The money comes through St. Vincent de Paul. We act as a broker, but you're helping in real time. You're a true angel to someone in their time of need. And so that's what we called it. We named it Angels on Call. You can find it on the App Store. You can find it on Google Play. And it's essentially this idea that, back to my 10-year-old question, there are more people who want to help than who need help. We have to connect them and we have to invite people to do it. And that's what this app does. And we think wherever you are in the country, in the world, whatever's going on in your life, when you get pinged and it says, this family needs help, and you read the story about that family, you say, yeah, that family needs a little bit of connection and a little bit of hope. I'll do it, even if it's part of it, right? Because then it'll ping Brent, and then it'll ping Bill, and then it'll ping, right, until that family's need is met. And I think that's a beautiful way to come together as a community.
How long have you had this app now going?
Yeah, so 2024 was our first full year with the app up and running. We finished it in 2023. We ran from 2022 to 2023. We ran it on a spreadsheet that we just, we called the next person down, right? And that's essentially all that app is. It's a queuing system.
Right.
Who's next?
And and obviously continuing to grow, the usage of it has expanded.
Usage, yeah, adoption. We probably average between 30 per, last year we added 30. Well, all right, I didn't like that. We'll edit that out. Um, Adoption is growing, of course, not as fast as the need in our community, but year over year for 2024, we were up 30% in number of angels who provided gifts to families in need, and we were up about 25% in the amount that we were able to support for family need.
I think it's a fantastic idea too, because you're kind of you're taking something that's very serious, but you're also kind of gamifying it. And as opposed to just, writing that blank check, there's actually a result that you see as a user of that app where you've made a real big impact. Um, Before we wrap this up, I just want to say this. I think that, and I'm curious your experience with dealing with other donors and people that have helped you along the way. I'm a firm believer that money's a very energetic, entity. It's kind of an amplifier in a lot of different ways. But I think if you send it out there in the universe to do good things, that ripple effect is a lot larger. I mean, am I a little too esoteric with that, or do you think that there's some truth to that?
I absolutely think there's truth. I mean, I think I've seen so many cases where donors have come to us and they said, at first my tax problem or whatever, my advisor suggested that I look at charitable giving, and I made a gift as a strategy, right?
Yeah,
As a tax strategy. But I've received so much joy from that act of giving. And I now feel like I'm part of the St. Vincent de Paul family, that I want to do it more. And I think that idea of joy and purpose helps in all areas of life, right? When we can feel that by giving, we carry that into other areas of our life. And
I
I think
agree.
I think that's part of the energy that you're talking about, right? That's why, whatever euphemism you want to use, but that's why more comes back to you than what you give. Because you have that joy and that purpose and that connection. And there are some pretty interesting stories of donors who have uh, made pretty sacrificial gifts, and they come back a year later and they say, I'm in a better financial position and I want to do more. Or, you know what, I'm not in as good of a financial position, but last year I just got so much joy, and it didn't hurt what I needed. I have everything I needed. So it teaches you something about yourself too. And I think that's why, we talk, and I know you do because we've talked about this, but that's why we talk to our kids about giving, and why it's so important, because you really learn something about yourself through that act of giving, and something that is really key for those young people to kind of take into the rest of their lives, that it's not all about receiving. It's not all about dopamine hits. You can give too.
Well, I think you'd asked me kind of in the beginning what something that I've learned about your organization is, and it's really this. I think that everything to a certain degree is an industry. And unfortunately, I do think there's a poverty industry in this country. There's a homelessness industry. There are entities and organizations that benefit from keeping people dependent, whether it's a government bureaucracy or whether it's certain nonprofits that are out there. And what I think I've learned through our conversations together and seeing the work that you're doing is it's really that final, that healing, value point, or that service point that you're coming from, where, the goal is to offer that hand up, get these people whole again, getting them stable, getting them back and being productive with their life. Because, to your point, I think it was Christ that said the poor will always be with us, and they will be, but it doesn't have to be the same poor all the time. You can,
Yes,
you
that's
can
so
keep
good.
you can kind of keep them moving, help them out when they need to. And to your point, I do think it's a math problem. There's an enormous amount of affluence and wealth that this nation and our community is blessed with, and it's a matter of helping to get those resources in the hands where they can make the most impact. And what you find when you're able to do that is both sides win in that equation. I firmly believe that. For people that are that are curious about St. Vincent de Paul, about your mission, about where you may have needs, how do they find you?
Yeah, so the best place to learn more about the organization is our website, svdpaz.org. And you can also find, if you have specific questions that you want a human to answer, feel free to find me on LinkedIn, and send me a note. But, I think, Brent, the big thing is people don't always have to be ready to act, right? They can do exactly what we did today. They can tell stories, they can ask questions, they can get to know more about the challenge that's facing our community. And I think through that exploration and through that experience, they're going to be pulled in a certain direction. Doesn't always have to be St. Vincent de Paul. We're okay with that. We want people to find where they're going to get their meaning and purpose, but we gotta be engaged, and we gotta ask the questions. And that's why I'm so grateful to you for the time we've spent together, and for you inviting me on here today, because it's been a great conversation and opportunity for us to tell our story.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that.
I really don't have anything to add here, Ryan. I do need to add my.
That's unique for you, Bill. You normally have
I
have,
put
have
him to
some pointed
sleep.
insights.
No, you did not put me to sleep. You feel I am literally filled with gratitude at what you do, and thank you for what you do, Ryan. I mean, I sat here and I thought I do have a couple of reactions. One is what you do in Phoenix and in Arizona scalable, because it's impressive that you would take an app, you would take an idea of like, well, how do we deal with these immediate needs, and you go and you evolve into the idea of an app where you have, in essence, donors on call, right? Which is fantastic. The idea that you present housing to people and you say it's here and we're here to help you move forward, not stay where you are. Those are incredibly commonsensical ideas, incredibly creative approaches to problems. I mean, I know this is kind of above your pay grade, but it's it's like, how do you scale that? How do you move that out to the larger community where people begin to rethink and maybe reinvent the way they try to problem solve these issues?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and the thing that I share with folks who ask this question is, I go, this is pure economics. So we were told by former sheriff in Maricopa County. He said, "You know what it cost me to jail someone for homelessness?" He said, "About $60,000 a year." Right? $60,000 of taxpayer money, right? And there's no positive outcome. Even if they're released from jail, they're still out on the street. There's no positive outcome. So let's assume someone doesn't go to jail. Do you know what it costs for our system, for someone to be homeless on the streets for a year, to use the emergency room, to use the paramedics, fire department, police, services like St. Vincent de Paul? It costs our system about $40,000 a year, right? Okay, now let's ask what it costs St. Vincent de Paul to move someone. We're talking about $22,000 to $25,000 per bed per year. And I already gave you the stat. We're moving
Multiple
more than
people.
one person
Yeah.
through that bed in a year, right? So we're a fraction of the cost to the system at a higher success rate with a charitable deduction. I mean, so one of the ways that we scale it is to tell the story about the economics and the common sense.
Mhm.
It is a better investment for all of us to support charities who are held to pretty high standards of efficiency and effectiveness. And so I think that's one thing. And Bill, there was an old Irish priest from Phoenix who, whenever he was presented with a problem, he'd smile out of the corner of his mouth and he'd say something like, "Well, Bill, all it takes is a little bit of money." And I do think there's some truth to that, because we can scale this app. We can create a technical term, but multi-tenancy, which means we could do it in Phoenix, we could do it in Dallas, we could do it
Right.
in Trenton, and we could create multi-tenancy for about, and some other upgrades that the app would need, for about $250,000 one time. So for those charitably inclined folks who say, that's a good idea. We need that to scale nationwide. There's a one-time investment with a proven group, with a solution that's ready. Like, we're not testing anymore, it's ready.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of it is just straight common sense, and some of it takes a little bit of money.
And for those interested in donating or contributing to that, I would encourage you to reach out and get in touch with Ryan and with the St. Vincent Paul Society. It's terrific. It's a great story, and thank you for coming on Brent's podcast today to talk about it. I think it's something that everybody needs to hear about, because this ended up, it could have been a depressing issue, and what I'm taking away from it is an awful lot of hope. And I
Huge
feel
optimism. No,
I feel huge optimism. Yeah, Brett, thank you.
No, and I think, the conversations I've had with Ryan is I don't walk away from any of our conversations overcome with the heaviness of the magnitude of the issue. And the issue's, it's significant and it's out there and it's real, but it's solvable. Now, it may not be solvable for everybody, but it's solvable for a big chunk of the people. And if you can, help people in the community and give them a hand up and elevate their own lives, I mean, it actually really works for all of us. And that's one thing that I think has been incredible about the conversations we've had, Ryan, is I don't leave our discussions with this overwhelming sense of dread that you can't make an impact, or it's like you're spitting into the ocean. It's really not that at all. There's ways to make significant and sizable impacts with far less of an economic commitment than you might think.
Yeah, you're right. And thanks for pointing that out, because we do see hope every day. And even in some really difficult situations, we can tell when someone has hope, and when someone dreams of their better tomorrow, we're excited. We say, this is gonna work. We can do this, right? And so it is a very joy-filled, hope-filled job. A lot of it's thanks to folks like you coming alongside us, letting us tell our story to share with more people. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So, Brent, for those who are listening to you today who find this conversation interesting, maybe they want to reach out to you to have a conversation, to have a relationship with you, or to talk to you more about what you know about St. Vincent de Paul. How did they get a hold of you, and what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, the phone number in here is 602-255-0555. Somebody on the team will get the call, and they can always find a way to reach me. Website is tws.finance, and that has, again, every conceivable way to connect with us. And then in terms of social media, very active on LinkedIn. And so if you message me on LinkedIn, it is me on the other side returning that message. And would love to hear from anybody that found this conversation that we just had today with Ryan meaningful. And hopefully it can connect you with Ryan directly, and you can make an impact yourself.
Yes. And for those of you who are listening to this podcast who are not yet subscribers, do this one thing that's really simple to do. Just hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button, become a subscriber. The benefit of that is that every time Brent drops a new episode of this podcast, you're notified and you can give it a listen. And there are lots of conversations like this that he holds on a regular basis on this podcast. This one is a special one. Ryan, I've got to give you some credit on that. It's terrific. The other thing I would ask is, if you find this podcast meaningful, useful, helpful, tell people about it, share it with other people, because word of mouth promotion is a powerful promotional tool, and we would very much appreciate it. Until next time, I'm Bill Tucker. On behalf of Brent and everybody at TWS, thank you for taking the time to listen today. And I will remind you, as this podcast reminds you, you can go out today and make a difference or not. You have a choice. Until next time.